Hey guys, welcome back to r/Maliciouscompliance. Imagine your boss literally ordering you to serve raw, rotten meat to paying customers and threatening your job if you refuse. Most people would quit on the spot, right? Well, I didn't quit. Instead, I did exactly what he asked for, and what happened next destroyed his entire business. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, "Boss told me I had to clock out anytime I left the till, so I did every single time." So I used to work retail for a manager who thought customer service meant chaining me to the register. One day he tells me that I've been leaving the till too often, and by too often he meant grabbing change from the safe, getting a roll of bags, and even walking 5 feet to throw out trash. His new rule: if you step away from the register even for a second, you must clock out. Alright then, next shift I took him literally. At 9:10 AM, a customer drops a jar that smashes near the counter. I clock out, grab the paper towels, clean it, clock back in at 9:16, 9:40, receipt printer jams, clock out, walk 3 feet to maintenance, get the roll, clock back in at 9:47, 10:05 customer wants coins for the parking meter, clock out, walk to the safe, get change, clock back in at 10:13. 10:42, I need to grab a bag of quarters for the till, clock out, 20 steps to the office, clock back in at 10:50, 11:15, someone asks me to check if we have larger bags. Clock out, grab them from literally the shelf behind me, clock back in at 11:18. By the end of the day, my time card showed that I had left work 13 times. It added up to nearly 2 hours of unpaid breaks, all for basic stuff that I was supposed to do. Payroll flagged it, HR called me in, and I showed them the email from my boss laying out the rule in black and white. The next thing I know, he is the one being chewed out. The rule vanished overnight, and magically we were trusted to use common sense again. And the next one is the title Malicious Compliance story, and it is titled, "My boss ordered me to serve raw, rotten food, and I complied." So I don't spend many days without feeling grateful that I'm no longer in the food service industry. Those lifelong members of that industry will forever have my respect, as I'm fairly sure that I would have been chewed up and spit out if I had not gotten out years ago. In fact, the restaurant from this story was nearly the last place that I worked in food service. Unfortunately, after this incident, I still did take 2 more jobs before I bailed. So I was working as a line cook, and we were really trying to be some sort of competing force against the bigger chains, except we had half the budget and none of the large corporate structure. So still, while being far from fine dining material, we had a loyal crowd of regulars who enjoyed our cheap beer and high tolerance for people who took up a bar stool or a booth for most of a shift. How we ran the front of the house may have been lenient, but in the restaurant business, food safety is as strict as biblical law. Truly, it can be life or death if you make a mistake, and people can get sick. Strict health codes control every aspect of the kitchen, temperature checks and procedures shape the creation of every dish that is set before a customer. When I worked in food service, I was strict with myself to follow each and every procedure because I believed in the importance of what it all stood for. My general manager, and I'll be kinder than he deserves and we can call him my manager, did not. My manager was someone who viewed school zone speed limits as suggestions and only followed them if he saw cops lying in wait. He described food safety procedures as so-called guidelines and considered throwing out expired food too damaging to the business, bottom line to stomach. I have heard him say on multiple occasions, "If I can stand to smell it, the customer can eat it." I don't think it's hard to imagine just what kind of disasters this mindset can cause, but you don't have to try any longer. One morning I'm helping to unload the delivery when I came across our order of meat and found that it had been mishandled. The cardboard is soggy, the packaging stank, and when one of the boxes was cut open, the meat was already slimy and discolored. I found my manager immediately. "There's no way we can serve the meat from this shipment, it is beyond spoiled," is what I said. My manager tried to wave me off and said, "I'm sure it's fine. We're behind on prep and cannot waste time cooking everything twice." It took a bit of effort, but I finally got him to come back to the kitchen to show him the meat. "Seriously, this is bad. Don't act like you cannot smell that stench." My manager just shrugged and said, "Look, we are slammed and dinner rush starts in an hour. Even if the supplier would take it back, it would be at a cost and we would be without meat for most of the night. I'm not wasting that money. Just get the meat dishes out however you can. Raw, barely cooked, I don't care. Slice it thin if you have to. Customers won't know the difference. This is about speed. He started walking away without even giving me time to pick up my dropped jaw. Luckily, that worked in my favor. I sent him a text saying, confirming, you want me to serve this spoiled meat however I can, even raw if needed? Yeah, stop wasting time asking me about it, just get the orders out fast. Time to get to work then. Dinner rush came. I did not take any shortcuts or break any rules. I followed his explicit instructions to the letter. For every meat dish that came up, strips, grilled meat sandwiches, I sliced the rotten meat paper thin and served it completely raw, exactly as my manager had ordered. Some dishes I gave the bare minimum sear to make them look cooked, but they were raw in the middle, just as he specified. I took extra care with my knife work and presentation. I would ensure that every dish looked restaurant quality. I would not sabotage the presentation. I had no need to. And well, it was all plated beautifully and the waiter served it. I did take one precaution though and had the waiters warn me about which orders were for children. For any kids' orders, I used meat that was still left over from the previous week. The complaints trickled in at first. This meat tastes funny. Why does it smell like that? This meat is completely raw. Insert Gordon Ramsay meme. My manager told them all it was just a new supplier and that some customers preferred their meat on the rare side. He comped what meals he had to in order to keep the complaints from getting worse or louder. It was all a bandage on a gunshot wound though. And well, it didn't take long for his brief moments of slightest goodwill to be overridden. I'd estimate around 40 plates of the spoiled meat went out that night, many of them completely raw, and I felt sick at the thought of the damage I had done. As karma, maybe I should have come down with something, but I managed to avoid that. 3 days later, the sky came falling down. We had been fielding angry phone calls since the day after service, and by the third morning, it was a constant barrage. Customers were livid. Multiple families reported symptoms of severe food poisoning. My efforts to avoid children seemed to have worked because the young members of these families were all fine. 3 people even had proof of urgent care visits after leaving the restaurant, and 2 of those had family members threatening us with lawsuits. The local health department was on the trail immediately. An inspector showed up unannounced during our lunch prep, and I remember the look on the health inspector's face when he lifted the lid on one of the remaining boxes of raw meat. He gagged and looked to have barely held onto his breakfast. It actually looked like his soul left his body the way he deflated. There was not even a need to continue the inspection. We locked the doors on the spot. Emergency closure, health code violation, full inspection on the docket. My manager insisted that the blame was at my feet. He claimed I mishandled the food, but those claims didn't hold up well against his own clear words in the text conversation. I showed the health inspector proof that my manager had explicitly told me to serve the raw spoiled meat so he could include it in his report. The inspector's liveliness returned within that revelation. He glared at my manager like he had the power to smite him where he stood. This is not just negligence. This is clearly reckless endangerment. You served raw rotten meat to customers? Count your blessings that no one is hospitalized yet. Chaos ensued over the course of the next week. Thousands of dollars were down the toilet as we remained closed without anything my manager could do to even speed up the process. We were going to have to wait for the full inspection and fix anything that was marked wrong before we even had a chance at opening the doors again. Not that it was likely anyone would be coming through those doors any longer anyway. The reputation of our restaurant was about as fresh and appetizing as the raw, spoiled meat. Local headlines read, "Restaurant shut down after intentionally serving raw rotten meat." The intentionally was thanks to a random line cook who reported on what he had witnessed on the night of the rotten meat. The owner was forced to fly in from out of state and actually pay attention to one measly location of his chain to attempt to put out fires before they could spread. When he received the report and verified the text messages with me directly, I thought I was gonna see a man burst from rage in real life. He brought in the entire staff and didn't let my manager know that he had already spoken to me. My manager blundered and stuttered and tried to explain the misunderstanding. The owner just gestured for my phone, and when I handed it to him, he started reading the messages, then went on to read my delivery notes, temperature logs, and any other documentation I had. It was like watching my manager get slowly deflated. The pitiful man looked like he was missing his bones by the time the owner had finished. It was all clear as day. I had done my job based on direct orders, and any deviation from standard food safety procedures had been at his explicit command. Without any additional fanfare, the owner said to my manager, "You're fired, get out!" My manager was gone. The documentation and clear place for blame to be placed served the company well. Without such a clear scapegoat, lawsuits would have come knocking, and the owner would have more than had his hands full. Update to the story: thanks for helping this post blow up. I love stories on this subreddit, and it makes me happy to see so many people invested in my spoiled meat nightmare. The health department allowed the location to reopen after 2 weeks of deep cleaning, food disposal, and retraining. A new manager was put in charge, and the owner made sure to pick someone with plenty of experience at bringing struggling locations up to performance standards, and he actually cared about food safety. Every employee had to sit through a food safety certification course, which was a great refresher. Although the doors had hardly reopened for business before I was on my way out, I could have stayed with the company though. After everything that happened, the owner pulled me aside and was effusive in his gratitude and praise towards my documentation. He knew that his company as a whole could have been deeply damaged by the lawsuits that would have come his way without my work. He offered for me to take the manager position, but I said that he would need an established manager for that location to have a chance. Then he went on to offer me either head a kitchen or a general manager of my own location. He even gave me the pick of the litter between half a dozen locations. I do feel bad about turning him down, but I was in the process of discovering that food service was not the right place for me to be. I was far from surprised to see that the restaurant unfortunately never recovered and ended up shutting down only a few months after it had reopened. People's trust had been broken, and ultimately that's the death knell for any business. I also had plenty of comments condemning my actions, and I don't fully disagree with you guys. I hated it, and the only action I'm truly proud of amongst all of the events that took place was keeping the spoiled meat away from the kids. In the end, I felt the only way to expose my manager and ensure he couldn't continue to hurt the restaurant and the community was to give him the rope he needed to himself. My former manager never worked in food service again. And yeah guys, I'm not sure if I should read that on YouTube. It seems like that is something that could demonetize me. Our chain might not have been huge, but it was big enough that the owner could easily spread word of his actions throughout the industry. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. I'm not exactly sure if OP really did the right thing here. I mean, it's okay to expose the manager, but the way he did it, I mean, he could have seriously hurt innocent people. That is some hardcore, almost like nuclear malicious compliance. This might have been bordering on being actually criminal. Either way, let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to click the like and the hype button if you want to support me. The next one is an amazing malicious compliance story that is titled "No Problem, sign this." Posted by user primary letter 8310. It seems that you people love my malicious compliance truck stories, all of which are true, and this one will be no different. In this episode, I'm driving the twin-stick R model Mack Boom truck, the largest in our fleet. This truck was big, heavy, and it had an unusually wide turning radius. At that time, I delivered construction materials while we had residential and commercial materials. I often focused on new construction and commercial sites due to the trucks being so large. Every once in a while, I would get a residential delivery. Mostly, these deliveries I could make from the street without having to pull on the property. This is not one of those stories though. So this one day, I'm told that I'm doing a residential roofing delivery to the roof of the house. My radar is now on because I'm familiar with the roads in that area and they are narrow. Delivery to the roof means I have to enter the property and get right up to the house. I get loaded and get to the job. As I approach the job site, the road is narrow, barely 20 feet wide. The house is on my left and facing the property, the driveway is on the left. Important in a second. So I stop and go find the person in charge, and he says, "You're right on time. I need you in the driveway and boom across the roof." I say, "That's great, but there are several issues here. Number one, all the vehicles parked on the street need to be moved down past the neighbor's house for me to fit down this road, and number two, I cannot make the turn from the street onto the driveway without driving across the lawn, backing up 2 or 3 times. Number three, I cannot guarantee that driveway can support the weight." He shouts, "I will move the trucks and you just get your truck in here," in a very demeaning tone. I say, "Okay, I will." As I back down the street to the intersection, turn around and back up the road, he gets all the trucks moved. I get into position to pull on the property and stop. I grab my clipboard and jump out. I walk up to him and say, I need you to sign this. We carry legal forms in the trucks that when signed makes the signee or their company responsible for any damage to the property, truck, load or towing fees to get the truck off site. Well, he signs and all but throws the clipboard at me. Well, okay then, game on. I turn into the yard and pull across the driveway and back up 4 times to get the truck completely on asphalt. Once in the best position I could get, I got out and looked at my handiwork. 8-inch ruts all across the front 29 feet of yard from the street. Each wedge where the tires went from grass to asphalt or asphalt to grass, the driveway collapsed and broke away. The rest of the driveway had several 6-inch ruts that were at least a foot wide on most of the driveway, but I'm not done yet. I have to put down my outriggers to stabilize the boom, because the driveway was as wide as the truck, meant that when I put them down, they would be in the lawn. I carried large blocks to enlarge the footprint of the outriggers to get stability on soft ground. This left 2 more 10-inch holes in the yard about 3 foot by 4 foot square. I delivered the entire load with no issue, and then the homeowner came home as I was climbing off the boom and started screaming at me for the state of his driveway and yard. I calmly turned and pointed to the job foreman and said, "You need to talk to him." Then turned back around and finished wrapping up the truck. I could hear them as they were screaming at each other, but couldn't understand what they were saying. The final insult, I had to ask them both to move their vehicle so I could back out, and yes, more ruts were made leaving. I paused on the street for a minute to check out my handiwork, and it was bad. I got back to the warehouse and the bosses cornered me before I could get into the office. The contractor's boss had blown up my boss's phone with threats and complaints. I quickly explained and pulled out the signed affidavit. The boss said, "Well, okay then, we are covered," and I heard nothing more about it. That affidavit has saved my rear a lot over the years and has afforded me some great and funny malicious compliance over the years. And the next one is an absolutely awesome petty revenge story about a terrible neighbor, and it is titled, "Neighbor kept treating my driveway like free parking, so I taught him a $300 lesson." Okay, so this one is a bit long, but I need to get it off my chest. I live in a small cul-de-sac, nothing fancy, just your average neighborhood. My driveway fits 2 cars, mine and my husband's, perfectly fine. For the most part, everyone here minds their own business. Except my neighbor. Let's call him Jack. For whatever reason, he thinks my driveway is like extra parking for his family and friends. The first time it happened, I thought it was a mistake. His brother's car was in there, and he said it would just be a second. A week later, it was some of his friends dropping something off. I did not love it, but I figured whatever, not worth making it awkward. But it kept happening. I would come home from work. I'm a nurse, so some days I'm wiped out, and there's a random car blocking me. One night I literally had to park halfway down the street and carry 5 bags of groceries because his buddy's truck was in my spot. Every time I said something, he would do that half smile and go, "Oh yeah, sorry, they will be gone soon." Like, I'm the one being difficult. The final straw though, I get home late Friday night after a 12-hour shift, still in scrubs, starving with takeout that's already getting cold in the passenger seat, and boom, a giant white SUV just parked dead center in my driveway, not even off to the side, like full on blocking me from pulling in. I knock, no answer. I call Jack and he finally picks up and super casual goes, "Oh yeah, that's my in-laws. They will only be there a couple hours. Just park on the street, it's not a big deal." Well, that was it for me. I called a tow truck, and yes, I checked before. Where I live, if someone blocks your private driveway, you're allowed to tow immediately. The tow guy showed up in 20 minutes, SUV was gone before I even finished half my fries. About an hour later, furious pounding on my door. Jack's beat red, his in-laws are yelling in the background, and he's going off about how I did not have to take it that far. I just said, "You told me it was not a big deal, so I treated it like it was not a big deal." Then I closed the door. They had to pay almost $300 to get their car back, and funnily enough, ever since then, my driveway has stayed crystal clear, not even for just a second. And the next one is another super satisfying petty revenge parking story, and this one is titled, Don't get your pennies in a twist, I'll be gone in 5 minutes anyway. So the year is 2001, it is 8 AM, and I am late to the first class of the day with a professor that hates my guts. The pressure is real, and I'm getting my student crapbox car out of the underground garage, only to find the exit blocked by a black Nissan X-Trail. Based on the pristine condition of its paint, the poor thing had most likely never left town, and the worst obstacle it had surmounted was the curb it was now proudly blocking. Out of the vehicle steps a creature the locals, this is south of France, call a cagole. For those of you lazy to look it up, picture bleached blonde hair with a solid 5 cm of dark roots showing, skin so tanned it looks like leather, a wide open mouth full of chewing gum, with a cigarette somehow precariously stuck in the corner of her mouth. Granted, I could have reacted more politely, but a combination of stress, sleeplessness and general frustration to the fact that it was the third time in 5 days that somebody decided to ignore the big underground parking door studded with 3 no parking signs got the better of me, and I honked and yelled asking her to move her car now please, thank you. All I got in return was a finger and the scream, "Don't get your panties in a twist now, a-hole. I'll be gone in 5 minutes anyway, so just chill," before she disappeared in one of the nearby businesses. 5 minutes pass, no sign of the cagole, 5 more minutes, nothing, another 5, surprisingly enough, still nothing. At this point I'm guaranteed to miss the start of my class, and I'm already looking forward to the stern and condescending scolding of the professor. I'm delighted, my mood is improving by leaps and bounds, and resign myself to the obvious. This lady is not coming back anytime soon, and my only 2 choices left are either to somehow convince her to move her car or get it towed away. Since I had not been the most civil during the first interaction with her, I decide to amend my way, enter the premises she disappeared in 50 minutes ago, and find her sitting cozily with a cup of coffee and another cigarette doing small talk. If looks could kill, I would have been reduced to atoms on the spot. She answered my question with a colorful, "F you, you little crap. Can't you see I'm working here? Piss off. I'll be done in half an hour anyway, so what are you complaining about? Get the F out of here." She actually did come out 30 minutes later and would have escaped the tow truck had it not been for her 4 fully deflated tires, so instead she spent 15 minutes working on her 10 next to her car before the police removed it and gave her a ticket for illegal parking and another ticket for disorderly conduct and disrespect for the police force. It's never a good idea to swear and curse at cops. Also to this day, I still wonder if she noticed the potato I squeezed in her exhaust pipe. And yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you again tomorrow. Also let me know in the comments where you are watching from today.